Hi everybody. Today let's talk about accident prevention. Accident prevention is something that we're all interested in. We never want accidents or injuries to happen in our facilities. So today let's cover some points on accident prevention. Why do accidents happen? That is a question. I don't know how many supervisors, team leaders have sit with employees and have had to ask this question. Accidents happen for one or both of the following reasons: unsafe acts, unsafe conditions. Rarely is it both. Typically it's one or the other. Now, years ago when I was with a large self-insured workers' comp fund, I was there for 14 years as Director of Loss Control and Safety, and I would get first reports of injury in every week from the companies that we insured. And I had a habit of taking those first reports of injuries and reading through them and separating them in two categories: unsafe acts, unsafe conditions. Now, once I began to separate those in these two categories, I found out really quick where 80% of our accidents and injuries were coming from. Typically injuries, unsafe acts, employees doing things that either they weren't authorized to do, or maybe they haven't had the appropriate training, or maybe they just didn't do an inspection. But one common denominator I found was a lot of times they were just in a hurry, taking shortcuts. Maybe production was coming down on them and needing to speed up, or sometimes maybe it was just laziness. So these are the two things that we typically work with. Now, unsafe acts. Unsafe acts are actions by people that directly cause or contribute to an accident. Here are some of the examples: horseplay, running, drug, alcohol abuse or use, and I've just recently ran into this in an OSHA inspection. Not following procedures, taking shortcuts. If I could say anything in the world, if you have a lockout, tagout program and you have authorized and you have maintenance people who are using that program, do not take any shortcuts here. This is an area where taking a shortcut could cost you a limb, could cost you a digit, maybe even cost you your life. Also, unauthorized use of equipment or tools. You see that occasionally, but not very often. Using damaged equipment and not using personal protective equipment. Now, you know that if you walk into a facility and you're an employee of that facility and there are signs up that says safety glasses required, that means exactly what it says. Use your personal protective equipment. They're there to protect your eyes. Keep in mind, there are no replacement parts for your eye globe. If you rupture an eye globe, well, I guess there are some replacement parts. It's either plastic or glass, maybe even porcelain, so we really don't want to go there. Unsafe conditions, damaged equipment, poor lighting sometimes comes into play. Missing machine guards, I see it all the time. Just recently, in the last 2 months, I was in a large-scale OSHA inspection. They're going to get dinged really hard for missing machine guards. But what we found was as we walked through the facility and we saw these belts and sprockets that were unguarded, standing there spinning like crazy, and the guard was laying on the floor right beside it. So my message here is to especially maintenance and technicians and people who are conducting repair, service, or cleaning, or whatever it might be. If you take a guard off, put the guard back on when you're finished. You never know how important it is until something happens, like this OSHA inspection, or even worse, someone get their hand, their finger, or their clothes or something caught up in that rotating piece of equipment. Unsafe atmospheres occasionally. If you have something that's O2 deficient, or maybe you have a high level of CO or something along that line, maybe there's a vapor that's exceeding the PEL. It could be a number of things there that would create an unsafe atmosphere. Slippery floors. If you spill something, can't say it enough, clean it up immediately, or notify someone to clean it up immediately before someone walks through it. I remember doing a safety inspection at a large auto shop one day. It was a large dealership. And we had noticed when we walked through the facility, there was a fairly large puddle of antifreeze laying on the floor, and the garage floor. And so we continued on, and probably 45 minutes later we came back to that, and the first thing I noticed was there were some tracks that went right through the middle of the antifreeze, and about 3 tracks out there was this big long track where someone slipped down. And that, when elbows and bones meet concrete, a lot of times the results are not good. Lack of proper equipment, we don't see that very often. Most people have very good equipment. But here are some of the controls that we use to prevent accidents and injuries. There are 3 that we like to use: engineering controls, administrative controls, and training controls. Training controls exist of exactly what we're doing here today. Now, engineering controls, we look at that and we talk about building design, equipment placement, things of that nature, location and types of machinery and controls. What kind of guards are we going to have, or do we have the two-hand control button that makes something activate? Machine guards, I can't say that enough, how important machine guards are. Equipment, location and access to make sure you don't have employees pinned in case of an emergency or something along that line. About administrative controls, hazard identification and analysis. I can't talk enough about conducting a hazard analysis or some kind of hazard assessment inside your facility, just to make sure, maybe some kind of job safety performance procedure, so that you know what the hazards are, what the best practice safety procedures would be for any particular operation. Identification of personal protective equipment, that would come in your hazard assessment. It would identify what the hazards are and what PPE you might need to use to prevent some kind of exposure. Specific safety procedures, something I like a lot when it comes to lockout, tagout, when we're going machine specific or operation specific procedures there. Proper storage of materials and equipment, also controlling access to hazardous areas. Notice, authorized personnel only. Danger, restricted area. There's a lot of things you can do to help control access to these hazardous areas. Authorization requirements for hazardous operations. There are certain people that you want to authorize to conduct procedures that could be more hazardous than others. Key, authorized lockout, tagout versus the other forms of lockout, tagout. Authorized people would be authorized to work into that more hazardous area, bypass guards and so forth to either repair or service a piece of equipment, something along that line. Then we have training controls. Training is necessary so that your employees, your management, even your upper management has a good idea of what procedures need to be in place, what are the do's and don'ts, so to speak, how to recognize, report, avoid, and control hazards. I'll tell you, if we could get companies to do these 3 items right here, 80% of your safety program would be in place. How to recognize, that's really important. Report, I can't tell you how important that is. Avoid and control. Not to mention how to safely use equipment, tools, and chemicals. How to select, use, and store personal protective equipment. If you could do those 3 things right there throughout your facility, you would really be in pretty good shape. Here's an old saying, if it looks unsafe, it probably is. There's something to be said about this feeling you have right here when you approach a particular operation or a particular situation. If it looks unsafe, it probably is. Tell somebody, tell your supervisor, tell your team leader, whoever it might be. Somebody step back and take a look at it. What can you do? Never do anything that you haven't been trained or authorized to do. That's unsafe. That should violate company policy and procedures, not to mention it puts others at risk. Report any unsafe act, any unsafe condition, any accident or injury, no matter how small it is. Report it to your team leader, your supervisor, or whoever you are directed to report it to. Make sure you report those. And I really wish we could get employees and companies to get on board with reporting any near misses. If you're in a situation and you jump back and you say, man, that was close, that was a near miss, that needs to be reported. Don't let it get any closer and then have to report an accident or an injury. Encourage others. Let others know that you want to work safely and expect them to follow the rules too. Don't let others endanger you or the people that are around you. You can't say that enough. Encourage. Safety is an encouragement. Inspect. Do a daily safety check of your workplace, your equipment, especially maintenance people. If you pick up a drill one morning and you start it up and it's rattling and grinding and it doesn't sound like it did the day before, obviously something needs to be looked at there. Your tools and yourself. Why yourself? Do you know anybody who has come into work one day with a little shorter fuse than they had the day before? Classic example. Sometimes they may be having issues at home. Sometimes maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep. It could be some medication that they're starting to take. I know some allergy medications that I take regular, and I can look at the pack and it'll do exactly what the pack tells me it's going to do. In 25-30 minutes, I'm feeling much better. But there are other people who can take that same medication and in 20 or 30 minutes they're ready to fight somebody because of the way it works, or they're ready to take a nap, something along that line. So be sure to just be aware of these things. Let your supervisor know if you're taking some kind of medication that makes you either sleepy or affects your vision, or maybe the way you feel. Maybe you're a little agitated because of a certain medication. Medications work differently in different people. Be alert. Think about your actions. Watch out for others. Know the hazards of your surrounding. Do we really have to say this? Watch where you walk. Yes, we do. Be accountable. Don't create unsafe conditions. Clean up spills immediately. Put things back when you're done. Sound like your mama talking to you now. Keep your workplace, your work area safe for yourself and for others. Be safe. Being safe is an active choice you have every day. You're going to make one choice or another. Either you're going to do it the right way, the safe way, or you're going to take a shortcut. Shortcuts are never a good idea. Always use the correct procedures for whatever safety or whatever procedure you are working with. Know the hazards and controls. Follow the safety procedures because they'll protect you and they'll protect the other people around you. I hope this has been informative. Take this to heart. Look through your procedures. If you don't have procedures, make sure you create some. Go out and look over the facility. Look at your written programs. Look at your training programs. It's important that we know about the machinery, the chemicals, all the things that we're using out there every day to keep each other safe and have a safe and productive facility. Thank you, and I hope you're having a really good day.